This young man had to work as a delivery driver every day to make a living. But today, due to a small misunderstanding at work, he was fired by his boss. He never really enjoyed this job, so he asked his boss to pay him his wages. However, the boss was a greedy man, coming up with excuse after excuse to avoid paying the young man. Seeing this, the young man didn't argue much, but instead drove his boss's car straight to a pawn shop to sell it. Time passed quickly, and Junho, who had learned martial arts, was strong and tall. Soon enough, he was called up by the country for military service. The moment he stepped into the military, he had to march day and night, enduring harsh training and strict discipline. Even the mealtime was only a brief 3 minutes. If someone didn't perform well, the entire squad had to suffer the punishment. Life felt like a living hell, and it made Junho extremely tired and homesick. Although he had a father who was an alcoholic, and whenever he got drunk, he would beat his mother, Junho would rather stay at home than be in the military. After 3 months of hard training and reaching a height of over 175 meters, Junho was assigned to the military police. His job was to guard the base, and when he was transferred to the military police barracks, he encountered the image of older soldiers bullying the new recruits. The bully was Sergeant Huang. Since he was about to be discharged, he was the boss in the barracks. Just as Sergeant Huang was disciplining his subordinates, as the young man was being a former soldier himself, couldn't manage to teach the new recruits. In his frustration, Sergeant Huang angrily slammed the young man's head into the nail. He then turned his attention to Junho, intending to do the same. However, Junho skillfully dodged, infuriating Sergeant Huang. As he prepared to hit Junho, the loudspeaker crackled to life, interrupting the moment. That night, Yunho was assigned to guard the military prison. There, he was haunted by memories of his drunken father beating his mother, who questioned why Junho only stood by and watched. It turned out to be just a dream. At that moment, Sergeant Huang blew the whistle, waking the entire squad. Because he had lost the sunscreen his girlfriend gave him, he punished the whole team. While rummaging through Junho's locker, Sergeant Huang found a letter from Junho's mother. Without asking for permission, he read the contents aloud, even mocking Junho in the process. This enraged Junho, prompting him to demand that Huang stop. Seeing Junho's defiance, Sergeant Huang threatened to shoot him. However, before any violence could occur, Senior Sergeant Bum Gu walked in. The boss shouted for everyone to go outside and pull weeds, but he wanted to speak with Junho privately. However, before he could say anything, Bum Gu had to leave on a work, so he told Junho to wait for him. Surprisingly, by 7:30 p.m., Bum Gu still hadn't returned, and instead, member of the DP team showed up. DP was the team that hunted down deserters who tried to escape their military duties. But this sergeant didn't seem very professional at all. He just sat around talking nonsense. From the notebook on Bum Gu's desk, Junho discovered that they were looking for a deserter. When Bum Gu returned, Junho gave him a suggestion, telling him that the deserter was likely working as a waiter at a pub, since deserters couldn't use identification cards, but pubs didn't require ID for employees. The deserter might be hiding there. Bum Gu agreed with the theory and realized Junho had talent. He then invited Junho to join the DP team. Junho hesitated for a moment, but when he saw the entire squad struggling to pull weeds outside, he agreed to join. Junho was soon assigned the task of capturing the deserter from earlier. Since the DP team usually worked in pairs, the corporal from before was assigned to go with him. However, once they were out of the barracks, the corporal didn't want to do the mission right away. Instead, he invited Junho to go for BBQ, and even dragged him into a karaoke bar to hang out. Though Junho didn't want to, he had no choice, since the corporal was his superior. The corporal also shared the reason he joined the military. He wanted his father to be elected as the chairman of the district committee. After drinking too much, Junho asked to step outside to use the restroom. While lighting a cigarette, a young man appeared and asked for a light. Junho kindly offered him his lighter before returning to join the festivities. However, the next morning, Bum Gu summoned him, furious, to inform him that the deserter had died. It turned out that the young man who had asked for Junho's lighter was the very deserter they had been searching for. Harassed severely in the military, he had decided to end his suffering by using the lighter Junho had given him to ignite charcoal. The news devastated the young man's family, and Junho was filled with guilt, realizing he had indirectly contributed to a death. Overwhelmed with regret, he thought that if the corporal had sought help from the beginning, this tragedy might have been avoided. Anger and remorse intertwined as Junho relentlessly struck the corporal's face. Fortunately, superiors intervened in time, otherwise there would have been another death on their hands. Because hitting a superior is strictly forbidden in the military, Junho was subsequently locked in the stockade. Seeing that Junho hadn't eaten anything, his senior Sukbong kindly offered him a packet of snacks. Sukbong was the one who had been bullied by Sergeant Huang the previous day, but Junho felt somewhat comforted by his gesture. Outside, Captain Lim had been appointed as the new military military police officer and was now Bum-goo's superior. Upon meeting, he asserted his authority, continuously posing difficult questions to Bum-goo. However, after learning about Junho's situation, Captain Lim decided to dismiss the corporal accompanying Junho from the DP unit, regardless of the corporal's influence. Junho was even released and allowed to continue working in the DP unit. When he returned to the military police office, Sergeant Huang relentlessly mocked Junho, insinuating that he had slept with Bum-goo to receive such treatment. Just then, Corporal Han, the captain of the DP unit and a kind-hearted leader who cared for his subordinates, stepped in. He had been absent from the unit due to a serious injury. Soon, Bum-goo assigned them a new mission: to find the deserter Jun Ma, another victim of bullying in the military. The last sighting of him was at the Incheon train station, where he had attempted to take his own life but was saved by bystanders. To aid in their search, Corporal Han taught Junho how to track online leads. However, accessing information would require a high fee, and they were short on money. They decided to reach out to Jun Mok's relatives for assistance, starting with his girlfriend. She informed them that they had broken up and had lost contact. Nonetheless, Corporal Han disagreed, insisting that Jun Mok still loved her dearly, as he had written extensively about her in his journal. Surprised by this revelation, the girl promised to reach out if she encountered Jun Mok again. Junho thought Corporal Han was lying to win his girlfriend's favor. Hearing this, Corporal Han pulled out Jun Mok's diary. They then continued asking around at places where Jun Mok had worked and also questioned his relatives, including Jun Mok's mother. She seemed very worried about her son and even gave them money to help find him. Junho refused the money, but Corporal Han didn't hesitate to take it. Having been searching for their target for 12 days, Junho began to suspect that Jun Mok was dead. However, Sergeant Han didn't think so. He believed that 9 out of 10 deserters usually called their families before they died. Just then, Bum-goo called and provided more details, confirming that Jun Mok had been bullied in the military. It turned out that Jun Mok snored loudly, so the others made him wear a mask and poured water into it. A truly cruel and vicious act. At that point, with no more allowance left, Corporal Han pretended to be poor and asked the hotel owner for an extension on their payment. Junho played along, pretending to support him, and together, they successfully deceived the hotel owner. After taking a shower, they used the money Jun Mok's mother had given them to trace the ID location of Jun Mok's internet usage. They quickly found a net cafe and began checking each person. Suspecting that someone might be trying to sabotage the business, the cafe owner threatened to call the police. Just then, they spotted a suspicious individual. Without hesitation, the two of them rushed forward to subdue the person, only to realize it wasn't Jun Mok. At that moment, Junho looked towards the subway station and said that he knew where the target was. Due to the constant disruption of his sleep, Jun Mok had been sleep-deprived ever since he fled. As a result, he almost got hit by a train. The reason Jun Mok was always found at the last station late at night was that it was the only place where he felt safe and comfortable enough to sleep without worrying about being caught. Sure enough, they found him at the last station, but Jun Mok didn't try to run away. On the way to escort the target back to the barracks, Junho gave him a phone to talk to his mother. Jun Mok's tears flowed endlessly as he apologized to her and promised not to cause any more trouble. By the start of the new year, the DP team had already captured 7 people. Captain Lim praised 2 of them and even granted them a few days off. After that, Junho went to meet Private Sukbong. Even though Sukbong was a superior, he still affectionately polished Junho's shoes. Knowing that Junho had time off, Sukbong asked him to buy drawing pens, as he was a true anime art enthusiast. Later, Sergeant Han invited Junho to his house, but before Junho could finish his instant noodles, Bum-goo called with a new mission. The two immediately set off for Busan to assist the local DP team in capturing a deserter. However, when the two teams met, they couldn't stop mocking each other. The deserter this time was named Chang Min. He had previously worked for a hired gun gang, making him a dangerous target. They tracked Chang Min's location and suspected he was either at his biological father's house or his girlfriend's house. The other DP team decided to go to the father's house, leaving the rest of the work to Junho and Corporal Han. However, Corporal Han was frustrated, realizing that the other team just wanted to capture the target before them and had intentionally given them the girlfriend's address. Junho quickly saw through this and memorized the address of Chang Min's father's house. As it turned out, Chang Min wasn't a good person at all. After deserting, he returned home and lived off his father, even shouting at him without mercy. When Junho's team arrived at the house, Chang Min's father stalled them, helping his son escape. But Chang Min wasn't an easy target either. He quickly jumped across to the opposite building and began throwing objects to obstruct their pursuit. When Corporal Han finally blocked Chang Min's way, he suddenly sprained his back. Seeing this, Chang Min couldn't help but grin with satisfaction. However, Junho managed to capture him. Both sides immediately engaged in a fierce exchange of moves, as they were both skilled in boxing, and the battle seemed evenly matched. Taking advantage of the situation, Junho pushed Chang Min down, but as soon as he stood up, Chang Min landed a devastating punch and quickly ran away. This infuriated Bum-gu, and Captain Lim wasn't happy either. He was scolded by his superiors in Busan for the failure. As a result, Captain Lim took his frustration out on Bum-gu, but being a subordinate, Bum-gu had no choice but to endure it. While Junho and Sergeant Han were recovering at the hospital, the DP team from Busan came to mock them again, making fun of the fact that they had found the target but let him escape. Just then, Bum-gu called. They thought they would be reprimanded, but instead, Bum-gu ordered them to catch Chang Min before the Busan team did. Afterward, Junho called Private Lee, a member of the IT team in the military, asking him to trace an IP address, which belonged to a member of the Busan team. Initially, Private Lee refused, but after Junho promised to buy him a Kobe beef meal, Private Lee agreed to help. Immediately, they traced the IP address, which led to a shopping mall. After asking the receptionist, they learned that Chang Min's girlfriend had once worked there. The receptionist even revealed that Chang Min was a male escort, so they headed to a bar based on the receptionist's information. After questioning all the male escorts, they found out that Chang Min only worked part-time there. He also worked in many other places. They were also told that Chang Min was a freeloader, and his girlfriend spoiled him a lot. To continue their investigation, they visited all 22 bars in the city, hoping to find any trace of Chang Min. Luckily, at the last bar, they encountered Chang Min's girlfriend. Junho immediately pretended to be a gigolo and quickly approached her. She even invited Junho for a morning coffee. During the conversation, Junho realized she was still very much in love with Chang Min and even worked at a bar to financially support him. The next day, Junho went to meet Minji. She told him that she needed a favor. Minji then went to meet the owner at her workplace to ask for an advance on her salary, but the owner flatly refused, saying that Minji hadn't repaid her old debt. Knowing that Minji was in need of money, Junho didn't hesitate to ask Corporal Han for a loan. Corporal Han was also very clever. He picked up the phone and called the Busan team, saying that he would capture Chang Min to help them, but the condition was that they had to give him 3 million won because they didn't want to do the work but still wanted credit. The two Busan DP team members agreed right away, so Junho handed the money over to Minji. Seeing how kind he was, Minji also gave him a gift in return. However, this was part of Junho's plan. As he knew Minji would give the money to Chang Min, he used Minji as bait, and sure enough, she went to meet her boyfriend. Chang Min wanted her to hand over the money, but Minji refused. She said she would give it to him, but Chang Min could go eat with her first. However, Chang Min wasn't so easily fooled. Not only did he refuse, but he also directly grabbed her purse. But just then, the Busan DP team appeared. Unexpectedly, Chang Min wasn't afraid at all and easily knocked out each of the team members. Fortunately, Junho arrived just in time. Without saying a word, the two immediately engaged in a fierce fight, exchanging blows back and forth. Thanks to his extraordinary skills, Junho easily punched Chang Min. Not willing to admit defeat, Chang Min then began to take out a weapon. Seeing this, Corporal Han quickly rushed over and delivered a decisive blow. He easily cuffed Chang Min, but the money Chang Min had taken from his girlfriend turned out to be gift certificates. The real money had been hidden by Minji under the toilet lid. She immediately called to thank Junho and then left quietly. Because Junho's team had caught Chang Min, Captain Lim was extremely angry. He had given them this mission with the intention of flattering the Busan Division commander. Unexpectedly, it was his own team that had arrested the suspect first, so Captain Lim vented his anger by scolding Bum-gu. However, this time Bum-gu didn't tolerate it anymore. He exposed Captain Lim's scheming to flatter his superiors. After a few threats from Bum-gu, Captain Lim was truly scared and no longer dared to act arrogantly. The Busan DP team was also furious. Not only had they lost money, but they had also lost all the credit. Because of the threats from Bum-gu, Captain Lim took out his frustration on Junho and Corporal Han. He even cancelled their leave. Just then, Bum-gu showed up and informed Junho that his father had been hospitalized. As a result, Junho was granted leave for the day and went straight to the hospital to visit his father. However, his father had not changed at all. He even claimed that Junho was not his son, simply because Junho hadn't brought money to him. Hearing this, Junho was extremely angry. He told his father that when he died, Junho would laugh loudly. Later, when Junho returned home, he found Corporal Han there. Because his mother refused to leave his father, Junho became even more upset and decided to leave. He wanted to return to the barracks immediately, but Corporal Han allowed Junho and his mother to have a private conversation. Finally, Junho expressed the frustrations he had been holding inside and wondered why his mother didn't escape from his father. However, his mother didn't respond and only handed him money to spend. Junho quietly left in silence. Meanwhile, after Junmak was brought back to the barracks, his mother came to visit him. However, she was shocked to find that the bully bullies who had tormented Junmok were not punished, they were simply transferred to another unit. Upon hearing this, Junmok's mother became extremely angry. Seeing this, Captain Lim tried to calm her down and promised that there would be a trial. Afterward, the commander of the 3rd Division, which was Junho's unit, had a meeting with Captain Lim and Bum Gu. The commander insisted on covering up Junmok's case, as exposing it would surely harm the military's image. Although both Captain Lim and Bum Gu felt deeply heartbroken over this, they could not defy their superiors' orders. The next day, the DP team was assigned a new mission. This time, the target was a sergeant named Tai Sik, who had jumped over the military fence unarmed. Through his comrades, they learned that Sergeant Tai Sik was a money-driven person. Despite an injury to his shoulder, he still participated in helicopter rope climbing training in order to receive extra pay. The key thing was that Tai Sik was very skilled at betting, and no one in the squad had ever beaten him. This was because Tai Sik used third-party software, applying it to the Multiho formula to win his bets. After that, Junho's team went to Tai Sik's house and discovered that he had been living with his grandmother since childhood. However, his grandmother had developed dementia. She even mistook Corporal Han for her grandson. As a result, they didn't manage to gather any new information. However, when they returned, they encountered a demolition crew. It turned out that the neighborhood was being torn down for construction. To continue their investigation, the two of them went to meet Tai Sik's university friend. From the friend's account, they learned that Tai Sik was the top graduate of his class, and he didn't engage in any mischief. He was a person with ambition, but due to the meager amount of money provided by the government, he had to take on various jobs at the university to make ends meet. The friend, who wore glasses, also explained the multi-ho problem. It was a problem that increased the odds of selecting the correct answer. For example, if you choose one of 3 doors, the chance of choosing correctly is 1/3. But if you know one of the answers is wrong and choose a different door, the odds of being correct are no longer 50-50, but rather 2/3. Therefore, by simply changing the initial choice, one would be able to find the correct door. However, after hearing this explanation, Junho and Corporal Han didn't understand anything. Just then, they received a call, and to their surprise, it was Tai Sik on the other end. He advised them to stop chasing him. Hearing this, they were both shocked. How did Tai Sik know they were after him? The two of them immediately started scanning their surroundings and, sure enough, spotted a stranger in black clothing. They immediately began to pursue the target, but unfortunately, they lost track of him and were even lured into a female dormitory. As a result, they were scolded by Bum Gu. After that, Junho returned to the barracks, and Sukbong woke him up by slapping a recruit hard across the jaw. The once gentle senior was no longer as kind. However, there were reasons for his change. Besides being bullied by Sergeant Wang, Sukbong also faced a lot of harassment from other seniors, including an incident where they forced him to strip and threatened him to perform indecent acts in front of them. At that moment, Sukbong had lined up the recruits and started hitting each of them one by one. Junho was deeply disappointed by this, so he called the new recruits to take a rest, which infuriated Sukbong. Just then, Sergeant Wang appeared. He had ordered Sukbong to mentor the fear recruits, and since Sukbong had failed to do so, Sergeant Wang crushed his hand underfoot. Afterward, he forced Junho to strike a recruit, even demonstrating how to do it himself. Just as he was about to hit Junho, Corporal Han intervened, pulling Junho into a dark room, pretending to teach him a lesson. Junho cooperated, allowing them to deceive Sergeant Wang. It was in this room that Junho recounted the multi-ho problem, applying it to the life of Tai Sik. He revealed that Tai Sik had quit school to enlist. If he assumed that Tai Sik had done so to abandon his grandmother, then there would be no further complications. However, if he assumed it was to protect her, then 2 complications arose. First, his grandmother had dementia, and second, their home was destroyed. Consequently, Tai Sik had deserted to earn money to care for his grandmother. The day before, Tai Sik had discovered that Junho's group was tracking him down. After some thought and planning, they figured out where Tai Sik was hiding, and they quickly located him. Just when Tai Sik tried to run away, he was apprehended. He wanted to see his grandmother one last time, but heartbreakingly, she did not recognize her grandson. Still, Tai Sik knelt and apologized to her. He then explained the reasons for his desertion. His grandmother was suffering from dementia, and their house was soon to be demolished. Therefore, he had joined the home renovation team with the aim of earning money to put her in a nursing home. After hearing such a tragic story, Corporal Han decided to unchain Tai Sik. They allowed him to stay and earn money for his grandmother's care, but he had to turn himself in afterward. This moved Tai Sik deeply. He cried and continually thanked the 2 men. Meanwhile, Sukbong was stationed at the base when another senior continued to bully him. This time, he forced Sukbong to strip and perform indecent acts again. However, Sukbong refused. Angered by his defiance, the senior brutally attacked him. Unable to endure it any longer, Sukbong fought back fiercely, hitting the senior in the face with his cap. After that, he stormed out of the barracks. This incident incident quickly reached the attention of the commander. Bum Gu wanted to initiate a wide search for Sukbong and recalled the possibility of police assistance. However, this idea infuriated the commander, as it would expose the situation to the media, jeopardizing the military's reputation. Thus, the commander wished to find Sukbong discreetly. The responsibility of resolving this issue was handed to Junho's group, and to begin their investigation, Junho visited the art center where Sukbong used to teach. There, a student provided him with a crucial lead: personal website where Sukbong posted stories illustrated by his drawings. When Bum Gu and Corporal Han reached out to Sukbong's close friend from the unit, they learned that Sukbong had been acting very strangely during his recent leave. It turned out that while they were watching a movie together, someone accidentally bumped into Sukbong and insulted him. This provoked Sukbong to threaten to kill the person. At that point, Junho decided to visit the senior, whom Sukbong had repeatedly punched in the face. Initially, the senior was defiant and provoked Junho. However, after Junho threatened to expose the dark secrets of the military, the senior's bravado diminished, and he began to share important information. He revealed that Sergeant Huang, known for bullying others, was soon to be discharged from service. Before leaving the unit, Huang wanted Sukbong to forgive him for the past. However, Sukbong did not feel the same way. He demanded a sincere apology from Sergeant Huang. Unfortunately, Huang only offered a half-hearted apology, which deeply frustrated Sukbong. Meanwhile, after obtaining the login credentials for Sukbong's personal website, they conducted an investigation based on the IP address and discovered a newly uploaded file. This file contained an anime series depicting the humiliating experiences Sukbong had endured in the military, including a dramatic representation of his planned escape. To their shock, there was an illustration of Sukbong wielding a knife in a quest for revenge against Sergeant Huang. Realizing that something was wrong, they traced the most recent access IP address for Sukbong and found that he was at a bus stop heading towards Seoul. Upon receiving the news, Junho immediately rushed to the bus stop, with the Busan DP team also joining to assist. They quickly split up to search for Sukbong. Junho eventually spotted Sukbong on a bus and wanted him to stop all of this, but Sukbong directly attacked Junho and seized the opportunity to jump out of the window to escape. Fortunately, the Busan DP team managed to capture Sukbong, but just a second later, he escaped again, resulting in one member of the DP team getting injured. At that moment, Corporal Han also encountered Sukbong, leading to a terrifying chase. Sukbong ducked into a movie theater, but Han quickly found him again. With no other option, Sukbong drew a knife. Fearing for everyone's safety, Han felt helpless and allowed Sukbong to flee. Since one soldier was injured, the commander became furious and vented his anger on Captain Lim. Meanwhile, after his discharge, Sergeant Huang started working part-time at a convenience store. In the military, he had been the bully, but outside, he faced cursing from the store owner and could only endure it without daring to retaliate. It wasn't until he got home that he felt free to vent his frustrations. At that moment, Junho showed up at his house, warning him that Sukbong was out for revenge, but Sergeant Huang showed no concern at all. With no other options, Junho waited on the first floor to keep watch, and soon enough, Sukbong appeared. Without hesitation, Junho chased after him. Even after being nearly hit by a car, they continued to pursue each other. After a lengthy chase, Junho finally cornered Sukbong. Just as Junho was about to cuff him, to their surprise, Sukbong brought a stun gun and immediately chained Junho to a spot. Sukbong then made his way to Sergeant Huang's house, but little did he know that Huang had been lurking outside and ambushed him. Huang relentlessly challenged Sukbong, slapping him continuously. However, Sukbong was no longer the coward he once was. Seizing a moment of Huang's distraction, he retaliated with a powerful strike to Huang's hand and fled, laughing maniacally. Unfortunately for Sukbong, he was quickly intercepted by Junho and his team. Sergeant Huang, armed with a baseball bat, tried to join the confrontation, but Corporal Han stopped him. While escorting Sukbong back to the barracks, Bum Gu attempted to impart some wisdom, but Sukbong's anger flared. Feeling that his suffering had been ignored by his superiors, his agitation intensified, and it was only a matter of time before an incident occurred. In a sudden turn of events, Sukbong managed to escape once again like a ghost and found Sergeant Huang. He delivered a brutal blow that knocked Huang unconscious on the spot. Following the chaos of the previous accident, Junho and Bum Gu were taken to the hospital, and fortunately, both of their conditions were stable. Being a wounded soldier, Sukbong's actions quickly drew the attention of the police. However, the commander refused their assistance. Instead, he summoned a special task force, gearing up to hunt down the target. Captain Lim was indignant about this decision, arguing that Sukbong was merely a deserter and not a terrorist. However, the commander held ultimate authority, and with no other choice, Captain Lim informed Bum Gu of the situation. Meanwhile, Sergeant Huang had been taken to a tunnel for Sukbong to exact his late revenge for the bullying he had endured in the military. Sukbong relentlessly relentlessly attacked Sergeant Huang, causing him to spit up blood repeatedly. In desperation, Huang sent a distress signal to the police, prompting them to rush to the tunnel. When two police officers entered to search, Sukbong managed to restrain Sergeant Huang and move him to another location. Junho and Bum-gu soon arrived at the site, and Bum-gu insisted that the two police officers go in while he stayed outside to hold off the special task force. Inside the tunnel, taking advantage of Sukbong's momentary distraction, Sergeant Huang began to fight back. Just as the police arrived with their weapons, they found themselves confused about who the hostage was. Taking advantage of the chaos, Sukbong aggressively attacked the officers. In the heat of the fierce battle, Sergeant Huang seized the opportunity to escape. Meanwhile, Junho reached the scene and saw the police assaulting Sukbong. He shouted for them to stop, only to be met with hostility from the officers, who threatened to hit him as well. In a moment of desperation, Sukbong charged three officers into a metal fence, using the distraction to slip away. However, Junho pursued him. Without hesitation, Sukbong pointed his gun at Junho, warning him not to follow. Outside, the commander had brought in the special task force, but Bum-gu intervened, asserting that Sukbong was not a terrorist. He even stopped a punch thrown by his superior in a show of defiance. Meanwhile, Sergeant Huang had not run far before Sukbong caught up with him in a dead end. Seeing that Huang was cornered, he feigned weakness, begging Sukbong for forgiveness. However, Sukbong expressed his deep dissatisfaction, revealing how Huang's bullying and humiliation had pushed him to contemplate taking his own life multiple times. Just then, Corporal Han arrived at the scene, urging Sukbong to stop his violent actions, but Sukbong was too furious, demanding that Han get out of the way. When Han tried to intervene, Sukbong fired a warning shot into the air. The sound of the gunshot prompted the commander to take decisive action. He ordered the special task force into action without hesitation. At that moment, Junho arrived at the location of the three individuals. He spoke to Sukbong, sharing positive words in an attempt to persuade him to abandon his intent to kill. However, just then, the special task force stormed in, with dozens of machine guns aimed at the target, which sent Sukbong into a panic. He expressed to Junho that for things to change, he had to take drastic action. Before Junho could react, Sukbong pulled the trigger, taking his own life. Witnessing the tragic fate of his senior left Junho heartbroken. The failure of the operation resulted in severe consequences. Captain Lim was reassigned from his unit, and Bum-gu faced disciplinary action. The following day, a high-ranking prosecutor from the Military Investigation Office, named Suk-gu, came to see Bum-gu. As Bum-gu's superior, Suk-gu sought to cover up the case of Private Sukbong. He fabricated testimonies from other officers and soldiers, claiming that Sukbong had a mental illness which led to his desertion and subsequent suicide. Bum-gu immediately protested, knowing that the true motivation behind Sukbong's tragic decision stemmed from the relentless bullying he had endured in the military. Suk-gu, incensed by Bum-gu's defiance, began to lose his temper. Suk-gu threatened Bum-gu to understand his place. Just then, Captain Lim intervened and immediately pulled Bum-gu outside. Captain Lim had never thought much of the higher-ups, but he insisted that Bum-gu had to agree to the fabricated testimony, otherwise the case would reach military court. At that point, not only would their division be in trouble, but Junho and Corporal Han would also face the consequences. Bum-gu was already disciplined, and Corporal Han had been hospitalized due to psychological trauma, leaving no one to protect Junho. As a result, he continued to be bullied by the old soldiers, who even forced him to fetch water for their showers while they stood around smoking. In the aftermath of the failed operation to apprehend Sukbong, the former commander was replaced with a new one who was equally ineffective. He wanted the DP team to keep operating, but with Corporal Han recovering, he appointed Junho as team leader, along with a new partner, a rookie soldier named Do Jun. Not long after the two left the barracks, Junho enthusiastically tried to mentor Do Jun in the way Corporal Han had taught him. However, Do Jun showed little interest. It turned out he came from a powerful family, and he had used his father's connections to get into the DP team. Do Jun believed that being in the DP team would allow him to have a more relaxed experience. Even when Junho wasn't around, Do Jun would talk down about him to his friends, confidently saying that all he had to do was pretend to be clueless and he could fool everyone. At that moment, Junho was fixing a water valve when he noticed Private Lee from the Army IT team being bullied by a group of old soldiers. The leader of the group blamed Private Lee for the failure of their operation to apprehend Sukbong, which had led to the disbandment of their special task force. Hearing this, Private Lee was furious, pointing out that these same bullies had cheered on as Sergeant Huang mistreated Sukbong in the past. Ignoring his reasoning, the bullies mercilessly attacked Private Lee. Junho witnessed the entire scene unfold. Suddenly, the ghost of Sukbong appeared beside him, lamenting that things had not changed. No longer timid, Junho boldly approached the bullies and demanded to know why they were treating Private Lee that way. To his surprise, not only did they refuse to respond respond, but they threw a pair of shoes at Junho's face. Following that, they continued to insult him, pushing him to his breaking point. Just as Junho was about to take down the last bully, Do-jun intervened. Just the day before, Do-jun had been mocking Junho, but seeing him stand strong and firm in the face of adversity filled Do-jun with admiration. However, Bum-gu noticed their actions, leading to Junho being punished by having to run laps around the yard. After careful consideration and to protect his subordinates, Bum-gu agreed to comply with Captain Lim's orders. But just as he was about to put pen to paper, the alarm suddenly sounded. There had been a shooting in a restricted military zone. It turned out that Sukbong's best friend had also been a victim of bullying in the military. After Sukbong's death, his friend could no longer tolerate the mistreatment and pulled out a gun, firing indiscriminately at the blind bullies before fleeing the military. News of the armed deserter quickly reached the DP team. Scared, Do-jun refused to stay with the DP team any longer. In light of this, Junho intended to inform the higher-ups of the situation. Unexpectedly, Bum-gu had been reinstated. With Do-jun leaving the team, Bum-gu mentioned that Corporal Han would be returning. Since Sukbong's death had left Han deeply traumatized, he had not been able to communicate well, but after examination, he was found to be physically healthy. Just then, the television broadcast news about Sukbong's best friend, Han, was taken aback, realizing that months earlier he had witnessed the old soldiers bullying Sukbong's friend. Outraged by the sight, he had chased the bullies away, but regretted not promising Sang-woo that he would help him in the future, believing it might have prevented the tragedy from escalating this far. Following this, a press conference concerning the Sang-woo case was organized, with Lieutenant Colonel Su from the Special Military Investigative Team in attendance. The audience was shown photos from the scene of the incident, where 2 soldiers had been killed and 11 others injured. To prevent further chaos, the military stated that once they identified Sang-woo's location, they would shoot him on sight. Tensions ran high as the news spread. Meanwhile, at Sang-woo's family's chicken restaurant, the crowd outside was in an uproar, which even included relatives of the victims. Then Sang-woo's mother stepped out to apologize to the victims' families, but she asserted that her son's actions were a result of the bullying he had endured in the military. This only incited the anger of the victims' families further. At that moment, Corporal Han returned, but he still couldn't find the words to speak. Junho felt a deep mercy and pity for his senior. On the other side, Lieutenant Colonel Su and Suk-gu were conversing when suddenly Bum-gu and Captain Lim burst in. Captain Lim couldn't understand why Lieutenant Colonel Su was so aggressively attacking Sang-woo in the media, arguing that it was effectively cornering the young man into a hopeless situation. Just then, Sang-woo began a live stream, openly admitting to his actions and exposing the bullying he had faced in the military. He stated that if he hadn't taken this step, he might have been killed first, and he expressed confusion as to why the higher-ups were aware of the situation, yet chose to ignore it. Hearing the horrific experiences her son had endured in the military, Sang-woo's mother fainted from shock. At that moment, Bum-gu noticed that Suk-gu was acting suspiciously, leading him to wonder what he was up to. Taking advantage of Suk-gu's departure, Bum-gu and Captain Lim rushed into the room and unexpectedly discovered a classified document. However, before they could examine it, Suk-gu returned. Leveraging his higher rank, Captain Lim demanded the password from him, but Suk-gu said nothing and charged at them. With just 2 swift kicks, Bum-gu and Captain Lim fell to the ground. Suk-gu then locked the two inside the room. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Su received a phone call from her daughter, who informed her that her father was in trouble. It was revealed that Major Su and Captain Lim had once been married but had divorced due to differing opinions. At this point, Bum-gu expressed his desire to join the search for Sang-woo, but Lieutenant Colonel Su insisted that they didn't need to look for him. Sang-woo would come to them on his own. Due to running out of his asthma medication, Sang-woo had secretly gone to a pharmacy, where he came across a video showing his mother being criticized and verbally attacked by the public. Tears streamed down Sang-woo's face as he watched, realizing this was all part of Lieutenant Colonel Su's plan to provoke him. Furious, Bum-gu could hardly contain his anger, but Lieutenant Colonel Su couldn't understand why they should allow a criminal to go unpunished. Just then, the military had surrounded Sang-woo's family's chicken restaurant. Snipers were already positioned, and they decided to use Sang-woo's mother as bait. As expected, Sang-woo soon appeared, holding a grenade, ready to die alongside everyone there. The situation became increasingly tense, with dozens of machine guns trained on him. Lieutenant Colonel Su hesitated to give the order to shoot, knowing that Sang-woo had hostages. In this critical moment, Bum-gu called Corporal Han, urging him that they needed to do something to save Sang-woo's life. Immediately after that, Corporal Han began a live stream from the scene, aiming to buy time and delay the military order to shoot. However, the network quickly cut off the video, and both Junho and Corporal Han were restrained on site. Just Just as Major Su was about to give the order to fire, Sang-woo's mother rushed toward her son, successfully preventing him from pulling the pin on the grenade. In a moment of vulnerability, Sang-woo embraced his mother, crying like a child. To defuse the situation in the public eye, a brigadier general stepped forward, elegantly reclaiming the grenade from Sang-woo's hand. He stated that Sang-woo would face punishment, but a fair trial would be held. While he presented this narrative to the crowd, behind the scenes, he instructed Suk-gu to thwart any proceedings for the trial. The brigadier general knew that if the trial occurred, the media and human rights organizations would pressure the military, leading to potential involvement from Congress. Just when Junho and Corporal Han thought they would be imprisoned for ruining the military's plan, they were surprisingly awarded commendations instead. Bum-gu recognized that the military was trying to close the case on a positive note for public relations. Soon after, the DP team was assigned a new mission. This time, the target was Sung Gyeon, a soldier who identified as part of the LGBT community and had faced bullying and humiliation during his time in the military. Hearing this name seemed to trouble Corporal Han. It turned out that 10 months earlier, Corporal Han and a long-haired thug had gone on a mission to capture Sung Gyeon. Due to his exposed identity, Sung Gyeon became extremely panicked and aggressively stabbed Corporal Han in the stomach. They had tracked down the bar from that day, but there was no information about Sung Gyeon. Consequently, the two reached out to the local police station, where an officer informed them that Sung Gyeon was on the list of customers for a city gang. Quickly, they went undercover as customers approached the gang leader. This leader led them into a van, but when the doors opened, they were welcomed by a group of thugs who suspected the two were undercover military personnel. Just as it seemed they would be beaten up, the police arrived on the scene. They had used two people as bait to get close to this long-standing gang. With little conversation, both sides erupted into chaos. Noticing the precarious situation, the gang leader hurriedly fled. Seeing this, Junho and the others immediately pursued him, running barefoot and jumping onto bicycles. However, due to their lack of driving skills, Junho unfortunately fell during the chase. The gang leader, delighted to see Junho's misfortune, thought he had gotten away easily. Unexpectedly, Corporal Han appeared on an electric bike, hot on the leader's heels. The gang leader, exhausted from the chase and thirsty from pedaling hard. However, Junho chased after them and upon arriving, saw the gang leader pull out a knife. Before he could strike, Junho landed a punch, knocking him to the ground. They immediately took the gang leader back to the police station, questioning. After looking at a photo of Sung Gyeon, the gang leader finally recognized him and recounted what had happened. It turned out that after stabbing Corporal Han, Sung Gyeon had panicked and sought out the gang leader, begging him to help him create a fake identity to escape the country. Sung Gyeon even held a knife to his own throat, ready to take his own life. Out of options, the gang leader directed him to a forger who specialized in creating fake identities. Currently, Sung Gyeon was living in a boarding house, juggling two jobs, working during the day and performing as a singer at a bar at night. In this environment, he could live as his true self. Following the gang leader's indications, Junho's group sought out the forger's headquarters. They pretended to be deserters looking for work. The forger immediately agreed, revealing that he himself was a deserter and understood the feelings of the two. However, before anything could be comprehended, someone discovered their true identities. So, the two immediately began to flee, with the gang members frantically chasing after them, wielding weapons. In the midst of the chaos, Junho ducked into a dark corner when suddenly a girl pulled him inside. It turned out to be Min-ji, the woman Junho had once helped with a loan. After breaking up with Chang Min, she had now become the owner of a pub. Shortly after, Junho spotted a picture of Sung Gyeon in the pub. Min-ji explained that he had once been a star at this venue. Sung Gyeon had been approached by a famous actor for a singing collaboration at a workshop in London. After hearing this, Sung Gyeon agreed, and days later, the gang leader had arranged for him to get a fake passport. However, Min-ji only hoped that he wouldn't be caught and could live his dream. After learning this, Junho left, and to thank him for the 3 million won he had lent, Min-ji said she would treat him to a meal equivalent to that amount next time they met. Following this, he and Corporal Han headed to the airport, where the receptionist provided them with a crucial lead. A few days earlier, Sung Gyeon had come to complete his exit procedures to London, but they discovered the fake passport. Panic-stricken, Sung Gyeon had fled, and even after hitting his head and falling, he had struggled to keep running. Eventually, exhausted, he collapsed on the highway. Indeed, when Junho's group arrived, they found that Sung Gyeon had died from excessive blood loss. The next day, Lieutenant Colonel Su met with Captain Lim, revealing that she had been demoted simply for hesitating to give the order to shoot Sang-woo. At that moment, she handed Captain Lim a USB drive containing classified documents that she and Bum-gu had intended to review, but were prevented from doing so by their superiors, Suk-gu. If this information were to leak, it could expose many negative issues within the military. The following day, the Brigadier General summoned Bum-gu Gu and Captain Lim. It turned out that the National Human Rights Commission of South Korea had sent a summons regarding a reinvestigation of a case involving Corporal Na, who was under Captain Lim's command. Corporal Na had died after stepping on a landmine at a watchtower, and the incident had been deemed an accident. However, his family harbored suspicions, prompting a reinvestigation, and the Brigadier General wanted them to visit the watchtower for inquiries. Initially, Bum Gu refused, stating that he only accepted orders from his unit commander. To his surprise, the commander called, instructing him to take the mission from the Brigadier General. Captain Lim also sensed there was something suspicious about the case, especially since Corporal Na had called him the night before his death. However, he had been sleepy and cut the conversation short. Regardless, since Corporal Na was one of his subordinates, Captain Lim insisted on going to the watchtower, which was a demilitarized area near the border with North Korea. On their way there, they encountered a soldier who made a sarcastic remark towards Captain Lim, nearly causing an accident. After this encounter, Commander Tae-san came out to greet them. Quickly, they moved straight to the core of the matter at hand. It was revealed that on the day Corporal Na died, he had been patrolling with his unit when unfortunately, a new soldier stepped on a landmine. Seeing this, Corporal Na bravely rushed to hold the position for him and slowly began to disarm the bomb. However, when he stood up, a massive explosion occurred. To proceed with the investigation, they questioned the new soldier whom Corporal Na had saved, who turned out to be Jung Han, the same soldier who had mocked Captain Lim. Since Jung Han had no alibi, Captain Lim grew even more suspicious of him. The next morning, Bum Gu called Junho to inform him of an important lead. There was a new soldier always opposing his superiors, and that soldier was Jung Han, with Corporal Na being his superior. They once again questioned Jung Han, but his attitude remained arrogant as he denied everything. Observing this, Captain Lim presented evidence confirming that only Corporal Na and he had been at the watchtower that day. From this, Captain Lim proposed a theory. Jung Han had lured Corporal Na to the watchtower and relentlessly provoked him, resulting in the fatal incident when Corporal Na stepped on the landmine. However, Jung Han continued to be defiant, challenging them to prove the truth. Hearing this, Captain Lim was ready to strike, but Junho promptly intervened to stop him. At the same time, Bum Gu confronted Suk-gu, who realized that they were in possession of the USB with classified documents. He even made a veiled challenge to them about releasing that USB, jokingly giving Bum Gu a box of Legos as a gift. He further questioned Bum Gu about his curiosity regarding why they had sent people to the watchtower, pointing out that even the commander at the watchtower was present there. Realizing that something was amiss, Bum Gu called Corporal Han to the watchtower. Meanwhile, Captain Lim's suspicions about the rookie soldier Jung Han grew stronger, leading him to confine Jung Han in a small room and continuously beat him mercilessly. Unbeknownst to them, the entire process of this assault was recorded by cameras. That night, Commander Tae-san revealed the truth. Corporal Na had been a bully, with Jung Han being his target. During the incident, Jung Han had, unfortunately, stepped on a landmine while trying to endure the bullying. Witnessing the death of his superior left Jung Han psychologically traumatized, causing him to become irritable and unpredictable. The decision to cover up the details of the case was made because if the truth came to light, Jung Han would end up facing a military trial, complicating the matter further. However, this was all part of the Brigadier General's plan. Aware that they were in possession of the USB with classified documents, he had lured Captain Lim to the watchtower to force him to investigate truth, capturing the entire process of him assaulting Jung Han on tape. They had even prepared a news article about Captain Lim's assault on the rookie soldier. If they wanted to avoid this scandal, they had no choice but to return the USB to the Brigadier General. They assigned Junho the task of fixing the USB. While waiting, Junho encountered the younger sister of the first deserter who had appeared in the BAF news, named Su Jin. She worked at the Human Rights Center, advocating for the rights of innocent soldiers. Meanwhile, after waking up, Corporal Han learned from Bum Gu that Junho had not returned to the military since the previous night. On another front, after being demoted, Lieutenant Colonel Su transitioned to become a lawyer. She visited the prison to meet Sang-woo, expressing her intention to defend him in the upcoming trial, aiming to secure the lightest punishment possible for him. At the same time, Junho discovered that all the files on the USB could not be copied. However, the shop owner shared a trick with him. He could replace the chip inside the drive to alter its contents. Out of curiosity, Junho decided to check the files inside and found a wealth of confidential information regarding the military. Among the documents, he noted some secure files detailing the shooting incident involving Sang-woo. It became clear that on the day of the shooting, a soldier named Nam Su was still alive. According to the autopsy report, soldier Nam Su died due to a lack of timely medical assistance while waiting for a rescue helicopter. He had only been injured during Sang-woo's shooting, and that delayed arrival of the command headquarters rescue helicopter was what ultimately led to Nam-Su's death. If this information were to leak, it would provoke a public outcry against the military. Meanwhile, the Brigadier General held a press conference with the media in an effort to publicly address the shooting incident involving Sang-woo that led to soldier Nam-Su's death. Lieutenant Colonel Su interrupted the Brigadier General's speech with questions about the military's rescue operations. The Brigadier General claimed that all victims had died immediately at the scene. At this point, Soo-jin spoke up, informing the Brigadier General that after the shooting occurred, a patrol officer had heard the gunfire and promptly contacted command headquarters through the emergency network. This indicated that there had been a gap of nearly an hour and a half before the rescue team arrived at the scene. In response, the Brigadier General refused to reply further. Shortly afterward, Soo-jin received a call from Jun-ho, who revealed the true cause of soldier Nam-Su's death and arranged to meet her at the crematorium. Meanwhile, although it was the day of his discharge from the military, Corporal Han requested Bum-gu to allow him to conduct one last mission to locate Private Jun-ho. They then went together to Jun-ho's home to visit his mother. There, his mother informed them that Jun-ho had left her a message saying he would be back soon. Unbeknownst to them, their entire conversation was overheard by Jun-ho's father, who struggled with alcoholism. He went to meet Suk-gu, and in a moment of madness driven by greed, he revealed that his son was in possession of the USB with classified documents. Meanwhile, on Bum-gu's side, while searching for Jun-ho, he suddenly received a call from him. Jun-ho declared that he needed to rectify the wrongs caused by the military system and that he would return after seeking justice. Quickly, the IT team pinpointed Jun-ho's location. However, Private Lee was summoned to the command room, where the Brigadier General pressured him to disclose Jun-ho's whereabouts. Once Suk-gu learned the location, he rallied his forces and set out to find Jun-ho. After informing Soo-jin of the meeting place, Jun-ho discarded his phone into a trash bin and boarded the train to the rendezvous. However, two soldiers recognized him. When one soldier went to the bathroom, the other was seized by Jun-ho, who swiftly launched an attack. The two exchanged blows, and after gaining the upper hand, Jun-ho easily knocked the remaining soldier out cold. By the time Suk-gu arrived, he found only his ineffective subordinate left behind. However, he quickly spotted Jun-ho in the distance. Just as Jun-ho sat down, the squad of soldiers armed with weapons closed in on his location. With no other choice, Jun-ho charged into battle. Thanks to his exceptional agility and superior fighting skills, he quickly took down the entire group of soldiers. Just as he thought the situation had stabilized, Suk-gu arrived and launched a sneak attack. Luckily, Sergeant Han arrived and took some time to help Jun-ho, but he was no match for Suk-gu. When Bum-gu shouted angrily at Suk-gu, he was slapped. Meanwhile, as Jun-ho managed to escape outside, he was confronted by the long-haired soldier Kim-jun, who was waiting for him. Kim-jun was the one who had originally been assigned to work with Jun-ho, and was also the soldier whom Jun-ho had just beaten brutally. Exhausted from the previous fight, Jun-ho fell easily to Kim-jun, who ultimately crushed the USB containing the classified documents underfoot. On another front, Soo-jin arrived at the crematorium, the meeting place Jun-ho had texted her. However, she couldn't find him there. Instead, she made a surprising discovery. Inside the urn containing her brother's ashes, she found a Ziploc bag containing a lighter and the USB. It was the very lighter Jun-ho had gifted to her brother. Meanwhile, Jun-ho was taken back to the military camp. At this moment, Kim-jun was incredibly furious after failing to capture the first deserter. Kim-jun had been kicked out of his unit, and to make matters worse, his father had narrowly lost re-election, leaving his family in a dire situation. This filled him with intense hatred towards Jun-ho. He declared that he had trained for over a year, waiting for this day to kill Jun-ho. Suk-gu was present, visibly angry as he criticized Kim-jun for destroying the USB. Although he managed to repair it, he was frustrated to find it contained only a fake document, while the real USB had been hidden away by Jun-ho. As a result of their actions supporting Jun-ho, Corporal Han and Bum-gu faced harsh reprimands from their commanding officer. However, the situation was even graver for Jun-ho, who faced a high likelihood of military imprisonment for stealing national secrets. In a moment of inspiration, Corporal Han announced he would be discharged from the military immediately. After that, Corporal Han approached the Brigadier General, presenting a recording that exposed the true nature of the Brigadier General. The recording revealed that the general had pressured Captain Lim to investigate at the watchtower, fully aware of the concealed truth. However, the commanding officer was no fool. Han had discovered the Brigadier General's weakness. It turned out that Private Do Jun was the son of a powerful family, and the commanding officer had deliberately placed Do Jun in the DP team to curry favor with his father. This was meant to facilitate his own son's studies in Boston and help him obtain a green card to avoid military service. Now armed with the recording, Corporal Han used it as leverage, threatening the brigadier general to halt the order to detain Jun-ho. Faced with the evidence and the potential consequences, the two were left with no choice but to accede to Han's demands. Jun-ho agreed to bring the USB to them before the trial, leaving the brigadier general with no choice but to comply. Meanwhile, as Kim Jun was transporting Jun-ho to the military prison, he received a call from Suk-gu, who informed him that the order to apprehend Jun-ho would be rescinded. However, before Kim Jun could grasp what was happening, Jun-ho managed to snatch the handcuffs off. In the ensuing struggle, the vehicle lost control, trapping Kim Jun inside, while Jun-ho quickly escaped. Simultaneously, Soo-jin arrived at the military base, demanding to see Bum-gu. She presented the Ziploc bag containing the lighter and requested to know the entire truth about her younger brother's Yeoligi military service. In their conversation, Soo-jin recounted the actual circumstances surrounding soldier Nam-soo's death, highlighting the injustices faced. On Han's end, to keep his promise to the brigadier general, he went to inquire about the USB at the repair shop. However, the shop owner informed him that Jun-ho had already taken the original version. Bum-gu also called Han to inform him of Jun-ho's escape. Hence, they agreed that they needed to apprehend Jun-ho first before returning the USB to the brigadier general. The next day marked the trial for Sang-woo. The brigadier general threatened Lieutenant Colonel Soo, asserting that Sang-woo would not testify against the military, even going so far as to apologize to her. However, Captain Lim intervened and advised his ex-wife to stall the proceedings until Jun-ho arrived with the USB. The trial quickly commenced, with both sides presenting their personal perspectives. The brigadier general claimed that the military could not be held accountable for the soldiers' deaths because no one could have anticipated Sang-woo's reckless actions. To counter this, Lieutenant Colonel Soo argued that Sang-woo had been persistently bullied by senior cadets in the military, and despite the presence of management witnesses, they had turned a blind eye, which led to further incidents of bullying. Meanwhile, the brigadier general continued to place blame squarely on Sang-woo, insisting that he had deliberately killed his comrades. At that moment, Jun-ho managed to find his way to the back of the courtroom, but he was met by Corporal Han, who was waiting for him. Han stated that he would keep Jun-ho there until the trial ended. Unexpectedly, Kim Jun also appeared, and Suk-gu ordered him to retrieve the USB. This set the stage for an unavoidable confrontation. After training hard for an entire year, Kim Jun's physical abilities had reached their peak, allowing him to easily overpower both Jun-ho and Corporal Han simultaneously. The battle continues until Jun-ho is exhausted. In a sudden turn of events, Corporal Han seized the opportunity to throw Kim Jun to the ground, leaving him unconscious. Han then insisted that Jun-ho hand over the USB, and in the heat of the moment, they narrowly avoided the car crash. However, Jun-ho informed Corporal Han that he was not the one holding the USB. At that moment, Captain Lim was called to the stand as a witness. He revealed the truth about Private Nam-soo's death, explaining that he could have still been alive had the rescue helicopter arrived on time. Captain Lim elaborated that the helicopter's delay was due to higher-ups being too preoccupied to authorize its deployment to save injured soldiers. The crowd reacted with outrage upon hearing these harsh truths. Meanwhile, Suk-gu followed Soo-jin, suspecting her of having the USB. However, to his surprise, he found nothing. Just then, Bum-gu arrived at the courthouse with the USB, asserting that it served as evidence to corroborate Captain Lim's testimony. It turned out that this was all part of Bum-gu's plan. A few days earlier, after Soo-jin had visited him, Jun-ho had contacted Bum-gu as well, leading to the development of a coordinated strategy. Bum-gu confidently stated he would be the one to present the USB in court. Captain Lim would serve as a witness to buy time, leaving the rest to Jun-ho and Soo-jin. The two needed to devise a trap to outsmart the brigadier general's men. Returning to the present, after Bum-gu presented the USB that validated Captain Lim's testimony, the presiding judge accepted the plaintiff's demand for compensation from the government. An investigation into the dubious activities within the military was ordered. Sang-woo received the lightest sentence possible, but due to his disclosure of classified documents that compromised national security, Bum-gu was arrested. Upon hearing this news, both Jun-ho and Corporal Han were filled with sorrow. Nevertheless, Bum-gu urged his subordinates to live well and make the most of their lives. With his term of service concluding, Corporal Han purchased a ticket to return to his hometown. Meanwhile, Jun-ho continued to fulfill the remainder of his military service. However, as he re-entered the military facility, he unexpectedly spotted Private Suk-bong, a beloved senior of his. And with that, the film comes to an end. Thank you all for following along, and I hope to see you in the next video.